And on to another danger in our community, a danger of e-cigarettes. There are reports of a potentially deadly new drug hitting the market. That drug is nicotine, but in liquid form, and a key ingredient in e-cigarettes. With us now, addiction expert Joe Schrank. Joe, we were talking in the green room about this, and I read scary stuff about what's in these cigarettes.
Well, that's a good question. I think that's one of the things about them that's unknown. We know that there's nicotine in a very concentrated form and in a liquid form, which people can overdose on nicotine. Not very many people know that, but it is possible. Workers who work in tobacco fields have to wear protective gear because they can ingest nicotine from picking it. So I think that's probably what's really important to know about them, is that nicotine is not a harmless substance.
Well, you know, the big sell on this, as we were talking about, is that people wanted to quit smoking, and this was seen as one way to do it. Do you agree? You're an addiction expert.
No, it's not a way to quit smoking. Maybe it's a way to shift your addiction to nicotine to a different form and a different route of admission. As we were talking about in the green room, it's kind of like diet soda, where people think it's healthier because it doesn't have the sugar or it doesn't have the calories, but it's still full of chemicals that are not healthy.
And it's full of nicotine.
And it's full of nicotine, which is highly addictive. Now, we run a rehab here in New York City, Rebound Brooklyn, and many of our clients report that nicotine is more difficult to quit than heroin. So we know it's extremely difficult that
and yet people do it all the time. People do quit.
People do quit, absolutely. It's not impossible to quit, but it is a very difficult addiction to give up.
Joe, what do you think should happen to these e-cigarettes? Because they're being marketed to kids out there.
They are being marketed to kids, and the sales to high school kids have doubled in 1 year. So it is something to be concerned about. Now, lots of people go from these to actual cigarettes themselves. And we do know that the data
So instead of making fewer people smoke, it may be making more people smoke.
It may be making more people smoke. And there isn't the long-term data to know the long-term health repercussions. It seems crazy. My mother talks about, in the 60s we smoked when we were pregnant. And nobody thought that that was weird. But, years later we know that that's crazy. So we don't know the long-term repercussions of these devices.
Because it hasn't been tested.
It hasn't been tested, and they haven't been around long enough to know what's happening.
So we're sort of experimenting in the field with the public health, not knowing what might happen.
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. And so there needs to be some kind of regulations on them, on the sales of them.
I think mom and dad need to say no. I think that's what has to happen.
Well, I think that mom and dad saying no is something that's incredibly valued, that's left the culture, and it needs to come back.
Joe, thanks for coming on the show tonight. Great to meet you.
Thank you.